This week on the Unamplified podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the Unamplified podcast. My name is Cynthia Mbamalu, your host, and with me today I have my co-host.
Hi guys, I'm glad to be back.
Yes, we've been pulling you back a lot this season.
Yeah,
because you need to get used to this camera. Yeah, and it's March, it's the Women's Month. This is a month we celebrate women and call for support to women inclusion or gender equality. And so I have two powerful guests with me or with us today to have the conversation around International Women's Day and why we have to celebrate women in the month of March. And it's our pleasure to have you here, Nefisa Atiku Adejuwon.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I tried to ensure I pronounced that surname well.
You pronounce it better than I can, so it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah, Nefisa is a gender rights activist. Since I've known you, I think I've known you basically working to promote the rights of women and girls and political inclusion for young women. So it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Makamaza, you've been here before.
Yep.
Season 1. This is your first time season 2.
Yep.
Okay,
It's
welcome back. Almost here.
Well, no, more closer to 9 months.
Closer to 9 months.
Yeah,
Okay.
9 months.
Yeah, it's good to have you, Makamaza.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, you're a guy that wears different hats, so I'm not sure how to introduce you, but I know he leads the comms team at Yaga Africa, is a communications expert, but is also big on political inclusion, and he was part of the leadership of the Not Too Young to Run movement. So it's good to have you
Thank you.
on set today. Yeah, International Women's Day. The month of March, every year, we have that reminder that the world needs to do better to promote women inclusion. The first, I think it was in March 1911, that was the first celebration of International Women's Day. And since then, there's been a lot of call for global action that promotes gender equality and closes the gender gap around different sectors. And this is 2024. And I'm wondering from the journey so far, are we even achieving any progress? Especially in the light of this year, if you the theme inspire inclusion, and then the UN there's the call to accelerate progress. And I'm asking myself, and now putting the questions to you, my guests Nefisa and Mark, and Ayo can also jump in. Why do we need to accelerate progress?
To some people, it would be an obvious question, right?
Yeah.
Why do we need to accelerate progress for men? Why don't we need to accelerate progress for women? They are human beings and they need to progress in life. And, when women progress, the entire society progresses, right? But funny enough, against that obvious answer, we look in society and we see a lot of inequality for women, right? Because of just the way the society is structured to view women, perceive women, their gender roles, the roles in society, the roles in family, they seem to carry a whole lot of burden when it comes to their place in society. And then you see the men that occupy different places, they have more access to leadership, they have more access to resources. Time and time again we've seen legal cases in Nigerian jurisprudence where you have women contesting for inheritance rights, especially in the eastern part of the country. They just recently gotten over that. I think it was last year or a couple of years ago that the Nigerian Women Trust Fund took the federal government to court for affirmative action for women, and the court gave a positive judgment. And then I think we had the federal government come back and appeal the decision. And you're like, why are you appealing the decision for women to enter inside leadership? It doesn't make any sense. Nothing good has ever come out of exclusion, ever, whether it's women, children, whoever it is, right? But we see a pattern of systematic oppression for women in politics, which is very obvious. I think the private sector has gotten better at positioning women in terms of business. You see MDs of banks now have women. I think after the sad death of Herbert Wigwe, the current CEO MD is a woman. I think Fidelity Bank, I'm not so sure, I think it's also a woman. But you see women representing in business and entertainment, and slowly even into aviation, right? But in places like politics, even education, women are now starting to get there. But there is quite a lot of work to be done. especially when you think about, the care economy and how women are the first line responders when it comes to caregiving. Look at how COVID-19 pandemic came and women were juggling jobs and juggling childcare because everyone was home 24/7. I'm just on my Rama that said they don't want to do it again. Speaking as a mother, I have a toddler, a 2-year-old toddler. I work. Apart from working, I do other things that I'm really passionate about. And then you come home, first thing, let me tell my friend, in fact, this is how I wake up in the morning. I wake up around 5:30, first go and pray. Next thing, rice is boiling. The next, like this morning, I could want hot jollof rice and fried chicken before I came out of my house for everybody, right? And people are still sleeping. Then I do that. I drop my kid at school. I bath her, I change her, and I head to work. And I'm doing that till 5 p.m. And let's say after work, I realize there's not enough meat in the house. Okay, let's go to Kado Fish Market to go and start getting me. Boom, 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 boom. You come back. Oh yeah, everybody's hungry. What are we going to eat? There's another plate of food. You go to the kitchen. You're turning yam porridge. Come and eat. It's a lot. And I even have it better than other women because I have someone at home who is helping me. So women have like 3-4 children, right? And husbands are like, no. Or you have ones that say that don't work. Before you enter the marriage, you saw a high-flying woman, right, who was doing great in her career, and then she enters and she's, don't work. Or you go into workplaces and, maternity leaves are like, in fact, there was a time a church member of mine was telling me in a hospital here in Abuja that her maternity leave was 1 week.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And then you have women, there was a time on Twitter now that everybody was shouting at a woman who left her infant at a childcare, a creche. And the people at the creche gave the child cough syrup because, the child was crying a lot. But when they are that infancy age, it's something to expect. And the child died. And then people were now castigating the woman instead of the institution that why didn't she quit her job to take care of the infant? So there are so many dynamics to this conversation on investing in women and accelerating progress. It's a really holistic situation because not only do we need to put policies and systems and structures in place, we need to also build the support systems for women to also be able to thrive and handle those things that happen.
Yeah, wow, you've just like given this big and comprehensive introduction to this conversation. And I want to pull in Mark, because I know you also work on issues around inclusion, but you're also big around promoting women inclusion and gender rights. So what's your take? Why do we need to invest in women to accelerate progress?
So for all the advancement that human society has made as a whole and individual societies, we are still clapping with only one hand because we haven't achieved that full inclusion for women.
And this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This makes sense.
Exactly. So you have, and like Nafisa said, there are those structural disadvantages for women inclusion and across all sectors. And it even comes up in the slightest of things, and you realize and I'll give a an example that that it might seem insignificant. At a former job of mine, I had a lady who was always cold with the AC. And for us, we are like, the AC is just perfect. And I did some reading, and I found it wasn't unique to her. And what happened? The person who invented air conditioning only tested it with men. And women often get colder quicker than men. And I was like, wow, so this is something that seems insignificant.
True.
But it also shows you the importance of that inclusion. Because imagine if in his testing of air conditioning, there were women in the testing who have had better outcomes and to have come out till now. And so you see those structural deficiencies across board, in every sector, in the homes, in societies. And we need to, that it just keeps showing how desperately we need to achieve that inclusion. So you have more, one, to enable women to live their best possible lives, which will end up be a good outcome for the society, will be better off. Because if you have a situation where you have, women are being relegated to a particular stereotyped role and they're not able to explore their full potentials, we are also losing. So on the personal, on the individual and the collective is a loss for everyone. So it's just that it's something that needs, while we have made a lot of advances from 1911 and through history, for example, a Marie Curie, who is the first woman to ever to be given a Nobel Prize, was because her husband insisted she be a co-author on his papers. So to the point where we now have more women being given Nobel Prizes on their but we still have a long way. Let's just pick you one example. There's still a long way to go. We still have a lot of work to do to dismantle those barriers, to pull women up to that level of equality as men, and to give them that that room to be their fullest selves.
Yeah. And I want to bring in Ayo. So, because I believe that the four of us here, almost our generations are not so far apart. I like to say the the younger generation. So be it millennials and Gen Z, the mix. Do we think that within our generation, that societal norms and those stereotypes that traditionally affected women's advancement and all, do we think within our generation that there's a shift, or it is changing in a way that can truly advance women's progress in different aspects of our society?
Yeah, so I would say...
Are you speaking for Gen Zs now?
I'm speaking for Gen Zs. Wow. I would say that Gen Z, this generation, my generation, is probably one of the most socially inclusive.
Okay.
In terms of the way they think, right? So our generation is the most likely generation to boycott a company or something because of their policies and all these things. I was reading a study, and they were like over 50% of Gen Z said that they would not work in a place that doesn't have inclusive gender policies and things like that, and not just gender, sexuality and things like that. So I feel like, yeah, things are really changing now. No, it was not just Gen Z, it's also millennials too, especially with social media and the way the world has become like a global community and all that. It doesn't matter what country you're in, you can effect change in any country, all countries around the world. And even things like International Women's Day and stuff like that, I feel like there's more awareness being brought to it because of social media and social media campaigns. Social media, you can even protest online now and things like that. So yeah, things are changing. Societal norms are changing.
Because when I was thinking like societal norms changing, and I was just reflecting on a conversation, you hear people saying, actually in the context of, getting into marriages and all, there are still conversations around a woman, she has a very busy schedule. Can this one be a wife? Can this one be a mother?
Oh, yes.
And sometimes you hear this amongst people that are in their 30s and maybe late 20s. Because I can't really speak for the 25 and below, because let's have not been in space where they had this kind of conversation. But this kind of conversation, you still hear those kinds of conversation happening. And one day I was asking myself, are things getting better, or do we just have some stereotypes move on from one generation to the next, and it's like this gatekeeping community that says this thing, so it will never change, this is how we want to keep it? So what are those norms, some stereotypes that still exist that we think affect or can adversely affect the whole idea of investing in women to accelerate progress?
There is the stereotype about childcare, right? About how women are the ones that are supposed to be taking care of the children. That's why they don't get a lot of promotions at work and things like that, because they're like, you don't have the time. And it's still there, even among Gen Z, millennials, it's still there. Just that some people think that they are above it, but it's like an internal bias inside them. They don't even know when it's going to jump out.
Actually, because sometimes you don't even know you have a bias until the day you are faced with a real situation. I think this is actually true. Any other stereotypes?
You know how they say, don't tell women that they are stubborn, they are just, strong-willed. I remember a time, I think I went back to my state, and then a man was engaging me, and I said, and out of the blues, he just, nothing, to do with career, he just said that, you're too stubborn, you can't get married. I said, I'm too stubborn. I said, I didn't even respond, because I felt it was really just too stupid for me to respond to such a thing, right? But you do have stereotypes that are seeping into the workplace. I have been in situations where I have been trying to express myself, and a subordinate who is male is saying, "Keep quiet," and I'm like, what kind of life is this? And I'm like, you know what? Everybody should do that. Anything that wants to happen should happen. I'm not even going to bother her. So there's, she's too stubborn. She's outspoken. She has a mind of her own. But if these traits were in a man, he would be seen as leadership potential. Yeah. But because it's seen in a woman, and even was a younger woman, they're like, this one looks like I say she didn't even receive proper home training. Right? And me, I give credit to the fact that I was trained the way I was, because it's until I left my house that I started seeing things like this. Yes, there was nothing like you can't do politics, or you can't aim for leadership, or I didn't have that upbringing. Politics was a dining table discussion, a carpool discussion everywhere. In fact, when I went into law school, my roommates used to tell me to shut up because I used to talk too much about politics. That's how bad it was. When I was in UNN in Suka, right? In fact, if you go to my Facebook, there's one picture after class, I think was it constitutional law. There's one guy that used to sell beer opposite our faculty. So all the guys gathered there. It was right in the heat of the Jonathan Buhari campaign, right? And they were all drinking good and eating. And I remember one guy, Imhotep or Abueze, and they were really bashing each other. No, Jonathan, Buhari this. And it was just me with coily hair in the middle, and I was like 40 something kg in the middle, saying, no. And we took a picture that day. Honestly, I can never forget that picture. I was the only skinny small girl in the midst of hefty guys. And thinking, because I didn't have that upbringing, that I couldn't engage in this kind of conversations. There was no conversation that I couldn't engage in unless it was inappropriate, right? So I now come into in fact, children, women, and the law. I'm not going to name the person, but yes, Professor Ngozi Ezilo, who is she great woman, she was our lecturer. One of these days, she was late for the class, and I don't know how, but the guys in my class just started talking about marriage, and I wasn't an active participant of the discussion. And then one of the guys said that when I marry a woman, I'm just going to be giving her some hot slaps from time to time to show her who's boss. I said, you see this? I made a mental note of that guy. Another one said that when he marries, his wife will stay at home. These are are you not seeing the irony in children, women, and the law? Cause she will that teaches about the rights of women. I said, wow, these are stereotypes, so they are playing out in like different diverse ways. And these are men that grow up and graduate and then enter into the economy and businesses and legal firms, and these are stereotypes that they have. So for instance, that guy that says that his wife has to stay at home, when he sees another woman that is married and has a child and comes to the office and is still hardworking and is deserving of a promotion, he will say, no, women like this should not be promoted. Give somebody else that they can handle the job. Or when I went for NYSC, and in fact I didn't even want to stay in that firm in the first place, so I'm happy they rejected me. The man looked at me and said that we don't really like having women at the law firm because they can't travel, that they are too fragile. I said, okay. I carried what he said verbatim and went to go and tell the NYC woman who was dispensing people. When she heard that, she was even angry and said that please, that they are not even sending any coppers there. And I said, thank God I didn't even want to go there in the first place. But these are like real life examples.
So I think all the stereotypes that have been there are still there. It's just two things. They are not maybe in varying amounts. Okay. And then you are more likely to get pushback if you express some of those thoughts publicly. And IMD almost stole my thunder when she mentioned social media. Because that's one thing that social media has been a net positive for.
Yes.
I mean, people on a good day that will not get pushback for saying things that are sexist or patriarchal or even misogynistic will get called out by people. I mean, so let's, for example, a religious leader who comes on the pulpit and then says something and around wedding, there's a period of my life that unfortunately that was a period when I was always being a groomsman, and I was hating wedding sermons because I was always hearing deeply sexist wedding sermons from one who will say a father's biggest gift to his daughter is to prepare for marriage, or if you are not married you can fulfill your purpose in life, things like that. Uncle
man, sorry, please. As you're answering now, please, I want to help me to answer this thing. Why is it that when they want to talk about marriage to people, they will it's just the women that they will just face. So it's part of the stereotype. It's part of the stereotype. That's why I don't know when we heard a top government official say things like
I don't know if I should
women
call her
should
out.
not. The Minister of Women
Affairs. Good.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you for
she
your
should be-
permission.
she
Exactly.
should.
Who said that the 80% of the responsibility of keeping the home is down on the woman? And I've heard those kind of things before. You get. Now, on a good day, she won't get called out by aides in the office, or the pastor or imam won't get called out by his congregation. But put it on social media, people will call you out. So you get more pushback when you call out those thoughts. And because this is societal reengineering, it's going to it may be abrasive initially, and you may see some pushback. And you see pushback. We see all these people who, mostly men, who begin to push out what they call red pill content.
Yes.
Who act as though they are trying to encourage men. They are men motivators, and they couch themselves that way. But in reality, a lot of them are pushing very sexist content. Yes. And so some of these people who don't want to admit to the reflection that they are seeing, find solace in those communities and regurgitate what's being said. But so all these stereotypes are still there, but some are much less than others. So I mean, for example, and then I see on Twitter people talk about a conversation around who does the cooking, and people say, "Oh, feminists in other countries are fighting for this, and here you're fighting about the right to who should cook." I'm like, but this who should cook, as small as it looks, opens the doors for so many
things. True.
Because if a woman knows, my husband can cook, I don't need to be rushing home at 5 p.m. to come and cook. I can now take that time off, and let's even the concept of politics and governance, and go for that political meeting. And I give an example. Someone like Margaret Ekpo.
Yeah.
The story of she going to politics was her husband wasn't available for a meeting.
And she went.
And she spoke so well. And they came by, and her husband was like, "Oh, I'll be going. You have my support." And he took the back seat.
Yeah.
The ability of that to happen. Imagine if he said,
this was before independence.
Imagine if he said, "You must be coming home. I need my dinner by 6 p.m. I don't want any excuses." Oh, you know those kind of things.
Yeah,
It shuts down that opportunity that she has. So, but that's why it's important that anytime we hear those kind of comments, not just online. I mean, it's easier to engage some of these difficult conversations online.
Yeah.
What I've been doing a lot of times is even offline. I hear something, and I remember my barber, a former barber of mine, was cutting my hair, and when I was with Genevieve Nanja, and it goes, but this one she no one marry. Man no fit control her. I say, what man go control her? She be good.
Good response.
And it started a conversation. And by the time the conversation finished, she was like, "Okay, you make sense. So it makes sense. You could try control person." By the time you begin to have these conversations and begin to, it begins to graduate. Because even for me, I have done a lot of unlearning. I'm still doing a lot of unlearning and relearning. And so those conversations are continually important to begin to have those mindset changes.
Yeah, when you talked about learning and unlearning, because I think this is something we all need to accept, that as individuals, learning is a continuous process.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, even for women, a lot of us were brought up, our process of socialization had certain biases and prejudices that we didn't even know existed. So it's also about learning to be open to unlearn and be willing to have conversations around things. For men, when I meet some guys and they're trying to advise, most times it comes like advice, right? Even though you and I know that if I was to give you this advice, you probably would give me a punch or say I'm silly for saying that.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you see a lot of men, you're not willing to even learn to understand why this is a challenge to women, or why this idea is fundamentally flawed. But you believe you know it all, so you want to assert and you want to say that. So it's about the willingness to unlearn. Because even as a woman, sometimes I ask myself, is this out of bias? Because sometimes, when you're growing up, there are things they tell you, a girl shouldn't do this, a girl shouldn't do that, this is for boys. These things, if you hear them consistently, it becomes a part of you in a way. And I think this is where, for me, investing in women is beyond just saying we want to promote gender equality. It's about the actions we take. It's about the measures we put in place to enable that women's progress, right? And I just wanted to find out, like, from your perspective, how can we invest in women intentionally in such a way that will truly accelerate progress beyond just the words, beyond just every government comes and say, I believe in women, I'll promote. Beyond just those, how can we, so at the governmental level, at institutional level, for respective both private and non-private sector, and then at individual levels? What can we do to say we're really investing in women?
No, I think there's a lot that can be done. I think a lot of people and organizations and governments have jumped on, Women's Month, and they do one event and spend oodles of money and say we're doing this, we're doing that. But they've been doing it for a long time, but nobody's been calling them out and holding them accountable. What are the systemic policies and structures that you are putting in place to make sure that women are better off than how you met them last March? Right? If it's to say one thing, yes, International Women's Day and Women's Month has done a lot of awareness. That we can say there is a better sense of awareness now on people on what they can do. But looking at the governmental level, I always come from the angle of political inclusion and wealth creation, right? We need to start giving women more access to credit, more access to loan facilities, to be able, especially when it comes to smallholder farmers, because like it or not, they are the ones at that rural level that are doing those kind of activities. So we need to have wealth creation mechanisms, especially geared towards women, and not in a way of I am launching this initiative today and the other governments might not be able to continue it because they feel like it's their predecessors own and they don't want to do it. Fashion it in a way that is sustainable. And then if you now come to policy wise, of course, we have things like affirmative action, especially starting from the political parties themselves. Right. I've always been saying that if we're going to get a level of affirmative action when it comes to national school, we need to start with political parties. What are the affirmative policies that political parties are putting into place to make sure that women have a certain quota in their leadership and even in the tickets that they get, on the national, state and local government level, right? If you want to go on the tangent of gender-based violence, there's this bill, a sexual harassment tertiary prevention bill that has still not been passed by the president. We go to different universities that don't even have a sexual harassment policy, no protection policies. How are we talking about those? How are we making sure that they are accepted by their senates and being implemented, on that kind of level? You go to private institutions. What do your HR policies look like? Right? How are you amending and updating those policies that they are reflecting daily life, remote working, flexible for mothers? Come and put one woman in one space. Someone I knew used to tell me how she would carry her not up to 2 months baby to the office because maternity leave was not enough. There was no care, so she would put the crib there, put the baby on the phone, her nanny would be sitting at her desk. It's not healthy. She said up till today the child
2
still
months.
has.
I thought maternity leave was 3 months.
Some organizations don't go by that. And there is no implementing structure to hold them accountable. So anyone just does what they want to do. And I can give it to, let's say, Kaduna State. Last I heard, 6 months that they give to their people under their state civil service. FCT, I think it's now 4 months, right? But you still have other private organizations, other government organizations that are doing terribly. Even the 3 months, you don't even complete it, right? And these things had adverse effects on families. So how are they doing in terms of their support systems when it comes, to women that are giving birth, women that, all those different sorts of things in schools, in childcare, your teachers. There are different ways to support women and not just support them on the day by putting them on panels and saying, that's it. Right, but by making sure the true test is that is this thing still going to be relevant by the next International Women's Day? If it's yes, then do it. If it's not, then please scrap it and think about something else.
Mark then.
I mean, I agree fully with her. All of those. One of the things I'm always proud to where I work is whenever I tell people about how nursing mothers get paid for their nannies to go along with them on trips, because you don't want to be taken out from their kids for those periods. And these are small things that many private organizations can do and should do, many organizations. And like your experience around when you're being funded, when you said we don't hire women, it's a mindset that happens in many places where there's that, that it's not even implicit, explicit bias where okay, if we hire her now before she gets pregnant, she gets married or she gets pregnant, has a baby, she can so we better don't hire women at all. All those kind of policies need to be gotten rid of. So you be more intentional in those kind of in including women in your workforce. There are a lot of laws that really need to go. I mean, there are 2 layers on the panel. So if I go from this one, they can correct me. Where you still have in the penal code of Northern Nigeria, where you can allow to beat your wife as long as it doesn't cause her grievous bodily harm. as a
Yes,
means
the
of
penal
correction.
code. Yes, sadly, it has not been amended.
Exactly.
We
You
have
know?
strange things in our laws that you'd be surprised.
Kano still hasn't signed up to the VAP Act.
Good,
Yes,
yeah.
because the VAP Act would have helped to correct
that.
some of that. But
So you have those kind of situations, you know, and then even on a societal level, those might are around where you see, people that where there's issues of domestic violence, and then you say, it's husband and wife matter. You don't get into those kind of things, you know, and then you can see that even sometimes, even from the people that have the constitutional money to protect them, like from the police, they say, no, we don't get involved in domestic issues, even though the woman is getting battered at home. You know, those kind of things.
The police self, are they not still assaulting women?
Good, exactly. So you see all this is all the way. You know, there are a lot of things that need to change. You know, I don't want to even get to on the personal, but on the personal level too. I'll say even from homes, how do you even create that environment for your girl child to be fully expressive herself? One of the things I realize is I don't have a sister, so coming from that, but I noticed that all the women I grew up admiring, they were very vocal, very opinionated, were often because they came from homes where there was a strong relationship with their dads, oftentimes, and also they had that freedom to be expressive, to be who they wanted to be. Because the truth is that if you don't have that kind of home environment, you are more likely to end up being the opposite, because we're in a society that has a particular way of thinking. You are more likely to be molded by that societal thinking. You know, a friend once shared with me something that, and she shared with me out of worry, because then she was teaching in a secondary school here in Abuja, and she was mentioning about how she was interacting with the SS. She was chaperoning the SS3 girls, and one of them had her birthday, and so she made a homemade cake, and then had the girls, okay, you know, what are your wishes for her, and every single one's wish for her was, I hope you find a good husband. And she was like, these girls have not even written JAM
SS3.
They've not written WAEC. They've not gotten into university, whatever schools they want to get to. And your prayer is she finds a good husband. But that's, you know, those kind of mindsets, you know, from when you grew up, you're being told everything around husband, marriage. You're speaking like this. Is that how you speak in your husband's house? Oh, this.
You cannot cook. Is that how you be in your husband's house?
You know, the courses you study, doing this, doing that. Oh, you have to study engineering. This one is study focus for women. No, you should go for a course that, go and study mass comm or this. And, all those kind of, you can't do this. You know, I was in secondary school. We some of us, we deluded ourselves that we were good at maths, so we did further maths. and we were struggling. So people, we started a lot of boys and girls, and the girls kept leaving until one girl was left, and she had a lot of pressure on her to leave. Like, you can't do this, you're a girl. And I asked her one day, like, do you want to continue this? She said yes. I said, good, continue, because not like we the boys are doing any better. We are all failing together. So
yes, it's just so you guys fail gallantly. Exactly. That's all.
There's nothing in you being a woman and making you fail, because we that are not women are also failing. We're all struggling. So let's continue struggling together. But those kind of, if you don't create that environment right from home where she believes, I can do this, I can speak up, I can be what I want to be. I don't have to fit into that box that society has created for me. When you begin from, she's not able to go out there. And when she goes out there and meets people who want to force her into that box, she's able to put back and say, no, I don't belong in there.
Yeah, this was not like how you said, like when Nefisa, because when you said, I remembered what she said, how she was raised and brought up, she had a voice. She argued and discussed and shared her opinion without fear and favor, as long as she believed in it. And so there's that value of the upbringing, how you're brought up, the environment, your process of socialization, I think. And I want to bring in Ayo, how can we invest in women, especially so beyond the government now, at the societal level, at the personal level?
Yeah, so at the personal level, I think we need to invest in creating more safe spaces for women. Yeah. So even something like this podcast now can be the way we educate people and stuff like that, and we are talking about things always from a gender lens. Yeah. So I feel like this podcast can even be a safe space for women when they're like, oh, every Wednesday I have this thing I look forward to that makes me feel uplifted and things like that. Even you as an individual, the way you carry yourself, the things you say, you need to be conscious of that, because you as a person, you can be a safe space for someone, right? With the way you talk, the way you encourage, the way you educate, and things like that. And also, even something like the way TV shows and movies and stuff are written and produced. Like, for example, when I was younger, I watched I don't know if anyone has seen this show. I watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And when I watched it, it was like the first time I ever saw one of the first times I saw a woman in a leading role. And then, because the premise of the show is that she's the chosen one. She's the one that all the bad guys are afraid of. Yeah. And wasn't common for me to see something like that on TV. And it made me feel like, oh, if Buffy can do it, I can do it. Yeah. Right? So even now, we need to invest in creating more things like that. People are very influenced by TV shows and movies that they watch. Yes. Even they don't even know that they are being influenced
true.
by these things that they are watching. So creating storylines and plot lines like this that uplifts women, that show the importance of investing in women and all that, it can go a very long way.
Yeah, storylines, the movies. These days, there was this movie, I just saw it on African Magic, I'm not sure which one, whether the Urban or the Showcase. And I had to go and look for the name of the director, and I told myself, any movie that is director, I will not watch it just because of the storyline. You know, most times our entertainment has a lot of influence on us. So if we constantly show a storyline that enables stereotypes, it's difficult to address them because you're just enabling and entrenching and mainstreaming it in everything we're doing. Yeah. But if we start telling positive stories that show women as leaders that are doing great and doing fantastic and achieving, I think all of those things actually go a long way. When I was thinking of investing, this is also one investment in the entertainment space. How are we supporting female talents, but how are we also supporting stories that promote equality in a way? So in the stories we tell in our entertainment space, but the big one on government, because the thing is, if you don't have policies, if you don't have legislations, be it from constitutional amendment to practical laws that enable women political inclusion, the truth is we'll still be dancing around the whole situation, and then the role political parties would play. But I'm also thinking around in the business space, you know, when you talked about policies that enable women to work better, I'm surprised you have this place because I thought like the minimum for maternity leave was 3 months. But then I remember someone said in one hospital it's 1 week they gave. You mentioned that. I think it was one of you.
My church member. She said in a hospital. 1 week.
So you can imagine, some women would, there are times women are forced to choose between their child and that is a difficult thing to put women through. But if you make this space enabling and conducive, it makes it easier for them to choose. Because the truth is, once you have a child, 1 week maternity leave for me, it's going to be a tough one. And only very strong women, like you have to be very strong.
Even for me, the man that wasn't the one that carried the baby 1 week, but I leave is too. Yes. Then imagine after for 9 months. You can imagine after
and all of that. So having better HR policies in institutions, that way you can maintain the staff. And if you look at the data, they said the data when it comes to women leadership in businesses, at the production entry level, there are more women. But when you start climbing up, the numbers begin to drop. And one of the factors is because at the entry stage, a lot of them are still younger. By the time there's childbirth, they go for maternity, they come back. This affects their promotion. The male counterparts are climbing. Trips, if you don't have support for you to travel with your baby, if you're not single mother, it means you're not on that trip. Sometimes those trips are career development opportunities. So it makes sense that when you start climbing up, the numbers start to drop. But when you come to the lower level, where a lot of work happens, actually, you see a lot more women. So like it's really like an all-encompassing engagement. And in the light of the celebration for this month, both of you have daughters. And you did talk about the socialization part. What are the practical things we can do as individuals beyond just the monies and everything? Because, I was reading the data, it said by 2030, if actions are not taken, about 342 million women and children would be living in abject poverty. However, if you invest in women, it could increase GDP per capita by 20%. A lot of data shows with more women in leadership role, with more women inclusion in the business spaces, in different levels of production, both formal and informal sector, that it actually supports economic development. The data is there. Research has shown that where you have women leadership, where you have some sense of equality, each year when they release the data on the best economists in the world, most of the top performing economies are economies that have achieved over 60% closure of their gender gap. So it's correlated in a way. And I wish we start thinking of this as from a monetary point of view, that educate women, invest in women, we make more money. Yeah. So what can we, either as parents, as individuals in a society, as friends, as people surrounded by women and girls every day, what can we do practically to invest in women?
Well, I think for me, one of the most powerful things you can do is to lead by example. Because children might listen to what you say and most likely forget because answers here flies out the other ear. But they remember the things that their parents do. And I think it's even more powerful in Mark's case because he has a girl and he has a boy, right? So in my own case, when I have just a girl, she's going to grow up and she's going to see me going to work. She's going to grow up and she's going to see me standing on stages and speaking on panels. She's going to grow up, she's going to see her father doing the same. And she's going to, when she leaves, she's going to say that if anyone tells her, I know you have to sit in the house. It's like, no, that's not what I saw my mother doing. Right? She's going to grow up and she's going to see me. Yes, I'm cooking. She's going to, oh God, it'd be like as if I cover this guy, but she's going to grow up and then she'll see her father making indomie because that's what he knows how to make. Yes. And then she's going to grow up and she's going to see that he's going to say that because there's something he says, you know what, me as I am like this, the way they trained me, I only know how to pound yam and to clean snail. It's when me I met it, I know how to make sardine stew and indomie. So it's better that we hire someone to do this work, so that we can free our time to do other things. Or if you come back, we are too tired, we carry our load and we go to Bruce Fish and we eat. That's the kind of environment that my daughter is going to see, and us living in. So tomorrow she gets into a relationship or a situation and the person is telling her you must cook, you must prepare fresh stew for me every month because apparently it's a thing for some people, right? Or do certain things. He's going to be like, that's not the way me I was brought up. I'll do the best I can. After that, if you have money, pay somebody to do it, but I'm not going to, be your slave. Right? Also sometimes my faith is very important. Our faith is very important as a whole, and there's always this ongoing conversation on respect and submission. And like I was asking you, I don't know why it is that anytime they face the woman, you must submit. But they really forget the other half of the coin, which is that a man has to love his wife
even to the point of dying, like Jesus died for his church. Exactly. Basically, it's even bigger responsibility.
It's a bigger responsibility, and if you put it in context, Jesus actually served the church. Yes, right. So they remove the servitude part and they leave the shoulder part. Yes. And so it's how do I put it? It's a loving symbiotic relationship conversation. That example is how we have so many crazy people out there today that they saw their fathers beat. See, the people that I'm really scared of, right, are the children that saw domestic violence happen and nobody took them to therapy or corrected that perception and then they went outside. They are the ones that I'm really, really concerned about because they see their fathers beating their mothers or behaving or depriving them of certain things. That when they come, pay your salary into my account. Or these things do happen. So if there's one thing I'm going to say as a parent, right, I'm going to say example is the most powerful thing. And one more thing, sometimes women can also be the custodians of these stereotypes that are very damaging, and we need to begin to rewire ourselves. It's not the one that my daughter will be sleeping. I'll tell the boy to go and maybe sit down and watch television or go and study or even wash the car. As far as I'm concerned, the two of them can wash car. Me, I wash car when I was young.
Yes.
So that's just it from me.
No, but very, very powerful points. Quickly, Mark.
So it's very similar to what I was going to say. But I'll start with also the words you say, because a lot of women I've interacted with say they grew up hearing things like, "Oh, are you going to do this in your husband's house? This is going to do your husband, or you can't do it because One of turning points for me in how I viewed gender issues was when someone I know lost an older sibling, and they're going to give her the sibling's car, and she said, "No, I can't accept that car because I want to get married." And 16-year-old me could not correlate how will the car if you're getting married. But because you also, and when you start hearing things like, oh, you can't have too much money, you can't do this, you can't do this,
to intimidate
you can't have a first
men.
degree, second degree, don't do a PhD yet because you scare men away. All of these words, and it starts from a very, very formative stage. And, so the words you say, the words you tell your kids, even for me, I have a son and a daughter.
Yeah.
So even if I tell them,
babies,
thank you, I can't take all the glory.
Of course, your wife fine past you now.
God works in mysterious ways. So the things, even what we say, what I will say to either of them, also goes a long, long way. And role modeling is very, very important, like she said. One of the things for me, I was proud of my dad was the brief period my mom was in party politics was he pushed her. And so and then one time we came home and we're having dinner. He came and looked at my mom like, why not running for office? And she was like, what? Say, run. Go and buy for House of Assembly and run. People that are running, are they smarter than you? He was content with her being the one to do the politics, and he was, even when she was one that made a choice, I don't want to do this anymore. But he was really down with that. He's fully in support. And that was a good, example for me.
You, yeah.
Another for me, even when I started dating, one of the things I always look out for is I couldn't be with a woman who is overly what we call traditional, who believes this is a woman's place, a man's place. I couldn't, because for me, I didn't grow up thinking that way.
Yeah.
I'll go to the kitchen, I'll cook many times, and my wife is at home and she's, maybe watching TV. And there are times that she's the one doing that. We don't have those roles. Funny enough, I don't know how to wash a car. Which is funny. That's one thing I don't know how to do. Anything else, even though we grew up with having female relatives with us, all from, we were never told this is what a man can do and this is what a man cannot do, and this is what a woman's role and all those kind of things, So from when the things they start hearing, the things they're hearing, the things they see, all the way goes a long way to shape how they think and then the things they eventually do.
Ayo, how can we invest in women? Your parting shots.
Well, basically, as an individual, you need to watch what's going on around you and correct people. Even if it's your parents, even if you are scared of the person, maybe it's your boss. Don't do it in like a disrespectful way, but say something. When you see something, say something. Like when you were saying the thing about how they say, if you see a domestic violence situation, and that's husband and wife matter. No, if you see something, say something. You should always have empathy for other people. You should always feel like, oh, this is something I can change with my voice and all that.
Yeah, I think we all have a voice. And when it comes to accelerating progress, investing in women is a collective responsibility. Yes. In fact, this month is a call for global activism to support women's inclusion, to invest a lot more in women. And I think it takes everybody to get it going, not only women. In fact, we need more men to get involved in these conversations. But at the end of it all, if we close the gender gaps across all sectors, I think we will start to see measurable progress, and we can even start celebrating some developmental goals that we're achieving, especially in countries in Africa and our dear country, Nigeria. We need to invest a lot more in women. And this brings us to the end of the conversation. For everyone watching and listening, think of one way to invest in a woman, in a girl, in a female friend, someone around you. Think of one way you can invest in that person. It could be words of affirmation. It could just be changing your mindset on how you engage with the person, or just saying some things encouraging to help them believe again and start to thrive. And I'll leave it to Ayo to shout out before I say my final shout out to the guests.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts on this episode and share. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yes, and to my amazing guests, thank you so much. Nefisa, I know if I had left you here, we would not finish this podcast today.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you carried the tour, carry on the go, but it was really, really nice having you as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, Alma Kamaza, each time we call you, answer. Thanks for answering this call.
Thanks for always for calling.
Yeah. And everyone, keep a date with us. We end with a cheers to Africa. Can we all? When you're on, you're amplified. Cheers.